Hey everyone! Can I see that? This just goes in like this. Hello, hello. Hi guys. Can you hear me? Yay! You can hear me. Yeah. Fantastic. Sorry about that. Now I'm just trying to connect with Haven Gallery. Oh, sweet. Hey Erica, I don't think your request came through. Can you send it again? Sorry about the technical difficulties. Hi guys. Thank you for coming. This is so much fun. Hello, hello. There it is.
Okay. All right. Well, we don't
Yay!
let me switch it to the art. Okay. That's like the third time that's happened where it goes on me and it's like, nope.
Hi, Erica. Thank you for having us.
Hi. Thank you for joining me. And hi, everybody. And thank you for joining us. As you may have already figured out, if not, we're here today with Martin Hsu, and we have his paintings for the Four Seasons, that is our current exhibition,
Oh,
on
yes.
view at my house. So, but
Well, you have a beautiful house, I must say.
well, thank you. This is my
Yeah.
husband's studio, so as you
Ah.
can see, it's kind of a mess. This is where he
Awesome.
works, but it has gallery lighting, so I like it in
Oh,
here.
beautiful.
It really allows us to show the work as it should be seen with the proper color and whatnot. So
Yeah, it
this,
looks great.
yeah, we have a mishmash of tables in his studio, but as long as we can see the work, that's the most important thing. So that's our focus,
Cool.
and so today, as you guys who have joined it in the past know, we'll talk about these pieces. We'll talk about Martin, his technique, his career, and answer any questions that you guys have. So please, as they come up, just type them in the chat and we will get to them as soon as we can. So
Yay.
the Four Seasons paintings, as everyone now knows, the Four Seasons is a show that commemorates each season: spring, winter, autumn, and summer. And so each artist has translated visually, I think, their emotions, their experiences, and their own personal stories into the pieces. And so here are Martin's works, and I'll get close to them and give you guys some detailed shots because there's some really beautiful shimmering effects that hopefully translates, as you can see right here, that we'll discuss with Martin too. But yeah, so if you don't mind, Martin, tell us a little bit more about why you wanted to join this exhibition and how you decided to tackle it with these girls. And would you have a name for them? How they're both girl and
You
bird?
know, they started off as little birds
Little
because
bird.
when I was in Asia visiting my parents this last time around, I found this really gorgeous little photography book with works by this female Japanese photographer that went around town and took all these gorgeous photos of these tiny little birds, and they're perching on these gorgeous, gorgeous trees, you know, like maple or sakura, cherry blossoms. And I
Ah,
was really inspired when I saw that. Immediately, I thought of bird ladies, which
it is.
is really funny because you know bird ladies are not traditionally sort of an Asian mythological creature. I just thought it made sense because I thought they looked so cute and they're really graceful in a way. So that's what sort of started off the Little Birds series, which I started doing the end of last year. And as far as the four seasons goes, I was really excited when you invited me to join the show because traditionally the four seasons have been done for centuries in Asia as scroll paintings, and they would generally be shown as a set, which is exactly how we're seeing them now. Um, and in 2018, I actually did a few paintings based on the four seasons, though I painted goldfish mermaids instead of my little birds then. And really fascinating, what fascinated, me about the four seasons is the symbolic quality to them. In a lot of Asian paintings, it's very poetic. So the sort of vegetation, whether it's trees or flower type of flowers that you pick to paint, they actually represent these really poetic meanings. And I wanted to go through, my four paintings with you just a little bit because I thought that was probably one of the more fascinating aspects about my research. And we can start with Spring, which is on the far left, with the green little bird. And I love these little ladies. They make me so happy.
Yeah, they're very
Thank you. So yeah, so we see cherry blossoms in this first painting, and I don't know, where everyone's situated around the globe, but I know in San Francisco right now, all the cherry blossoms are sort of in bloom, and it's always just absolutely gorgeous to walk through, especially when I am on my way to my studio, which is a good 40-minute walk from home. And I get to see all these trees around me, and sometimes you would see a bird or two, fluttering around. But with this piece, actually what I wanted to do was sort of get composition-wise, I wanted to design the painting to be as if she is perched on a swing. And I don't know if you can kind of see it because, the branches on the cherry blossom tree can go all over the place because they're basically going up and looking for light. So wherever the sun is, they go. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to design the branch and the flowers to be as if it's a swing. And she's literally like swinging back and forth on it. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
It's very beautiful. It's a subtle touch, but it also, I think, allows a more human elements, which your work tends to tie in the natural world versus the human world, and not just within your, the characters, these, little birds, but, more to it than that. So I think that was a nice little touch.
And I think by adding straight lines, like that, sort of make it a little bit more contemporary in a way, because you're generally speaking, say if you look at a 12th century scroll painting or 18th century, Japanese painting, you don't generally see a lot of straight lines because they paint it from nature. And where I come in now in 2020, I feel like, and this is why I call my art new traditional Asian art, is because it's seemingly traditional, but the subject matter and the design itself, I do all I can to make it as simple as I can, but at the same time, make it really modern.
Absolutely. And it's very evident that you're bridging the gap between the two.
Thank you.
Someone asked if you like turtles. We had that question in the past.
I absolutely love turtles. I painted many turtles. Some of my favorite ones are actually from Hawaii. As we know, most of them are endangered at this time. So like hospital turtle is one of my favorites. And I've done this drawing of like a sea, I guess like a male mermaid. So it's like a merman, I guess. He's like a warrior. He's riding on this really badass hawksbill turtle, defending their kingdom, kind of as if they were in Atlantis or something. But yeah, I'm generally drawn to nature and animals in general, and I do what I can to mythologize what I see. So just like the other day, I was in the backyard looking at a tree, and there was a little bird on top of the tree, and I thought, I bet that's like a harpy. I bet when we're not looking, that's actually a little lady, and we don't, what I mean? Like they are in disguise. We just don't see them.
I think so too.
So going back to Spring, I wanted to base these ladybirds or my little birds on actual birds, in real life, because I think that makes it a bit more endearing. So this bird specifically is actually called the Japanese white-eye. And if you go on Instagram right now and you go on hashtag Japanese white-eye, you will see all these gorgeous little green birds. And if you close up on her face, you'll see this white line around her eye. And that's why they're called a Japanese white eye, because they have this circle of white. It's as if they're wearing mascara, but in white around their eyes. And so there's a lot of these little details that you'll see in my ladybirds that I really tried to pull elements from nature and incorporate them in this sort of Martin Hsu's mythological world.
Why did you choose this particular bird for spring?
It's fascinating because if you look at all the cherry blossom pictures online right now, you'll see a lot of this bird. And I don't really know, I'm no bird expert, let's be honest, but just from research, I kept seeing this bird, like this type of bird. And I've always liked the position of them sort of looking over their shoulder at us. It's as if they know that you're watching. They just don't kind of, they don't want to recognize you immediately, but like as you'll see, through all these four paintings, all the birds are sort of in this sort of similar position. And it's as if they know you're watching and now they're recognizing your presence in their reality. They're sort of bringing you into this world. And I think that's one of the things I really enjoy to do nowadays is sort of bridging the gap, not only between traditional Asian art and contemporary art, but between like our reality and a mythological reality. The sort of way I see these paintings hung on the wall, I just imagine collectors like sort of walking through the hallway and nonchalantly, caught a glimpse of, say, the spring, and the bird is watching you. You're just like, oh, okay. So for a split second, this painting or this piece of art takes you out of your own dimension and brings you into another world. And this is why, like I think most of the works at Haven, gives me that feeling when I look at it. I feel like I'm being drawn into another world, and this is like the Four Seasons, like the perfect exhibition for us to do that.
I think so too, and I thank you for acknowledging that and seeing that in the curating at the space, because for me it's very important to have imagery that does that, imagery that takes you away but still keeps you connected with reality and in understandable forms and aesthetics. So a child can look at these pieces and derive pleasure, but so could a 100-year-old man. It doesn't matter. It's something that's readable, and it's someplace that, should you wish to go, it's waiting for you to join. So yeah, thank you for that, and your work suits that so beautifully too. So
Thank
it's
you.
always a pleasure to work with you and to have these pieces here as well. So the cherry blossoms were obviously reflective of the season of spring, because we all know that cherry blossoms bloom around now. And as you mentioned, some of us are lucky enough to see them. So let's go to one of the next seasons. I don't know if you have any in particular, if you want to go to autumn.
We can go to summer. Summer is the far right, the green piece, the turquoise piece. I love this piece because so traditionally, when you think of the flowers or the trees that the painters used to paint for the four seasons, they would be like lotus, and they would be, plum blossom or bamboo or pine. People used to paint a lot of pine in representation of longevity, because pine grows for a long time. But for this series, I really wanted to do something different, especially with summer, because when I think about summer, I think of like fruits. Like really juicy fruit, and it's like harvest, not exactly, let's say right before autumn, but it's like, it's just really vibrant. And I wanted to paint a cardinal because I knew I wanted to paint a red bird really, really badly. And I thought, well, red, fire, heat, summer. Great, that makes sense. So now, like, where do I place her? And then, of course, I found these pictures of cardinals resting on firethorn, which is fantastic because they bear these fruits, these tiny little red fruits that grow, along the branches. And they're just gorgeous because they're just sparkly in the light, and all that good stuff. And I guess one thing that I reminded myself when I was working on this piece is that I am not just painting berries. And sometimes I do this, and this is something I would recommend, I don't know, like maybe, beginner painters or whoever, who's watching this that might be interested, is that even though you're painting fruit, have a mental note that you're painting something else. So for me, I kept thinking Christmas lights, and I kept thinking little light bulbs because I wanted the fruit to glow. And that will, like, that concept and that feeling will seep into whatever you're working on in front of you. So, and of course, with this piece, she is the only bird that's singing. So if you close, if you close up, you'll see her mouth is slightly open. She's the only bird that's singing, and she's got this really content, like expression on her face. It's as if like because it's fruit, because it's about survival, and she feels she's taken care of because she's surrounded by food. So yeah, so this piece again, you'll see a lot of sort of dramatic crisscross when it comes to composition as far as the branches go. And it's always really fun to play with composition that way because if you can see, especially from this angle that you got it right now, Erica, you see this branch kind of frame the bird a little bit, and that was completely intentional. And you can use the branch to frame the bird, and as if, and especially at the same time, the leaves are actually pointing at her as well. So when you're looking at this piece, you're immediately drawn by the color of her feathers, but at the same time, subliminally, you are actually drawn by all the surrounding supporting elements that are drawing your attention to her.
Absolutely. I think that you gave artists, younger artists, I'd say, some great pieces of advice with regard to keeping that mindset of what you want to emulate, despite the fact that you might be working with a different subject, but also controlling the eye. And it's an incredibly important attribute to a successful piece of work for the person who's looking at it to be directed to where the artist's intention is. So you're always going to be led to this little bird, and it's through the shape, as Martin mentioned, and the direction of the branches and the leaves, and these are subtle little tricks that make that composition even more successful.
Thank you. Yeah, and for this series, especially with the four in a set, the way I treated the background, and as you see, later when we get the glimmer, at an angle, you'll see there's a thin layer of pearlescent metallic paint. And the way I do that, yeah, so the way I do it is I keep the bottom of the panels slightly darker, than the top. It's as if there's light on top, even though you don't show the moon or the sun, or you don't know what dimension they're in. They could be in a completely different reality where there is no sun or moon. But with that thin layer of metallic pearlescent on top of the panel, it really gives it something truly precious. And to me, and it's been told to me before at art shows that, especially with, I want to say like 40, 50-year-old like aunties and women and moms, and sometimes grandmas, because they would walk up to the painting and they would look at the metallicness on the wood panel, and they would come back to me and they say, "This reminds me of fabric." And I always thought that was really interesting. Yeah, like I never thought that I was intentionally painting on wood to look like fabric, but it all makes sense because traditionally, paintings are done on silk. Like the really inexpensive paintings, like Chinese scroll paintings, were all painted on silk. And with silk, there is, some metallicness and shimmery element to it. And I think this is my sort of modern way of paying homage to, again, something that is traditional, but very much now.
And that's really wonderful that you came to that through the feedback from those enjoying your work, because that's the type of art that you looked at from a very young age in your studies to become an artist. And although you weren't working on that same material, that aesthetic and that texture never left you. And later on, you realized that it came right through in your technique. And that's really special. It's awesome.
Thank you.
All those things you learn throughout the years, and it's a never-ending process.
Isn't it fun though? It's like every time I approach a new piece, I always remind myself, don't stress out, don't get too anxious, you're gonna mess it up, because every piece is just an experiment. It's all an experiment. Like you can think that you're gonna make something fantastic painting, but sometimes it doesn't end up like that. And at other times, when you have no expectation for a piece, it turns out to be everybody's favorite, and it's become this, like a staple, within decades. I think people always come to me. There's this one painting I did in 2008, and still to this day, people are like, "Oh man, that is like my favorite painting." And then, yeah, it's so funny sometimes, just things that just happen like that. Yeah. But with these pieces, I definitely I apply the techniques and experience I've had ever since 2015, which was when I started painting the goldfish mermaids and using this sort of new traditional technique. And little by little, I picked up things that I like and dropped things that I didn't like. I know with especially smaller pieces, I like it when there is a little bit of metallicness to it, because it is so small. It's like it almost, it's like trying to like grab your attention, on the wall, especially if you hang your own salon style. But the most, like all the metallic will go on the birds. Like I know it's kind of hard to see, but all like the gold and the pearlescent, the silver, is actually yeah, especially on the autumn piece.
Yeah, I
You
keep
can
going back
see.
to autumn because she exemplifies it very beautifully.
Yeah, and well, now that we're on autumn, I can maybe talk a little bit about autumn. And it's so funny that you showed, and there is like a thing, like what is it called? Like was it like, Easter egg or some sort? I was gonna say, when you find the Mickey's at Disneyland, but there is a little Easter egg in this painting, and it's probably, some people probably already picked it out, but I wanted to paint this ladybird as sort of a queen, or like, or an alpha female, or a matriarch. And by doing that, I actually gave her a crown. I don't know if you saw that, and it's that tiny leaf that's right above her head. I wanted from far this tiny leaf to be seen as her crown, as she is the queen of this maple forest. So these are all the fun design elements that, because of my animation character design background, that I get to sort of play with. I think about who they are, and I think about where is this most simple and most like strikingly subliminal way to get that message across. And for Autumn, whenever I see that little crown, it always makes me happy. It makes me smile.
It's the littlest touch that I think whether people see it now or later, it is one of those aspects to art that keeps giving. And for both the artist and the collector who's lucky to have the work in their home, as I've mentioned in the past, artwork grows and changes with those viewing it. And that includes you as well.
Yeah.
So whoever takes her home too, if they're not tuning in, may not realize until much later that this does represent a crown. And I think that's a very special thing because it's something to be interpreted and to be shared. So
Yeah, and it's like something that I got to share with you and with everyone that's tuning in right now. I don't think I've told anybody about this before, so this is kind of like a treat.
we usually, with the gallery and people coming in, we try not to give people too much information because we want them to come to their own conclusions and find their own connections naturally. But usually at openings and during the course of the exhibitions, I'm there and a lot of our artists are there as well to kind of give some of that insight. So hopefully this helps take the place of that. And many of, those watching have already seen these pieces and therefore have been able to come to their own conclusions about them. And if not, we're just giving you a bit of a path.
Yeah, so for the autumn piece, actually was because I knew for autumn, and when I had the color palette mapped out in my head, I knew it was going to be, maple leaves, and I knew the background was going to be warm, but kind of muted, but dark on the bottom. And I knew the central element was going to be her, and I wanted her to really shine bright. So I knew I wanted to do a gold bird. So of course my mind goes to, the canary first. And then I saw this finch, and it's just so gorgeous. And I thought, oh my gosh, the name is Goldfinch. This is perfect. So then, and of course, my way of painting these birds, and you probably see, especially on the shoulder, because I love looking at fashion, especially. It's like when I paint like sort of like the wings and like the feathers around their neck, I'm always thinking about like the ruffles. Yeah, like if it's made of fabric, what would it be made of? And if this was a fashion brand, what is it? Chanel? Is it McQueen? It's like, who is making this like feathered, like
Martin,
this coat?
You.
Yeah.
I think so, and I think it also, again, it seamlessly transitions a human to the bird element because you're taking two different aesthetics, two different life forms that don't go together anatomically. And you're finding ways through something like fashion that sometimes uses animal product, sometimes it's inspired by it. And you're using that in a way to piece them together. So they work. Once in a while you see someone working on a piece and it's part animal, part human, and it's just not connected. There's some kind of disconnect, I suppose. So there's an elegance and there's a softness to the way that you integrate both forms. And it's absolutely lovely. And
thank you.
This little neck part,
I know,
is one of my favorite parts. It's just so sweet.
Cute.
It really is.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up like softness because especially with birds, it's kind of it's different when I used to paint goldfish mermaids because I feel like when I used to paint the fins of the goldfish, I would think of chiffon, I would think about fabric that just kind of
Again,
flow
like a fabric.
effortlessly. Yeah, in water. But with birds, I'm always thinking about like, what's soft and what is like sort of volumetric, like something that's
Mm,
like sort of fluffy in a way. But and of course that plays also with their faces. And I just want to briefly talk about like who these birds are for me. My ladies, and if you check out my goldfish mermaids as well, my ladies, though they are dainty like birds or they are full figure goldfish mermaids, their faces are intense and they have strong brows, because for me, these ladies and these sort of female role models, they represent resilience and they represent wisdom. So in their faces, though they look really graceful, I just have always like a really strong, like sort of a strong brow in them. And they're and this is really funny. I had a brief conversation on Facebook yesterday. Somebody had recommended these paintings, and one of his friends made a comment, and she said, like, oh yeah, I love Martin's work, but these birds are creepy as And I'm just like, whoa,
oh,
that's awesome, because like it made me laugh because again, that's what makes art fascinating is when you make somebody have a really strong reaction when they
mhm.
see it, right? Because if you think about it, these mythological creatures are not all livable and precious for everybody. Everyone's got their own take on what they are. But because of her comment, it made me think about, so what do I think of when I see my birds? Like I have a really initial concept, I thought they bring me a lot of peace and comfort.
Mhm.
And they also sort of remind me of the wisdom in nature as if they were these messengers, they have messages for us. But it reminded me that especially like green little bird in the cherry blossom, like it really reminds me of all the strong female role models in my life, like my aunts and my grandmother and my mom, who are like, and my grandmother as well. She was like the most tiniest but most fearsome woman I've ever known. She was the matriarch in our large family. So when I see her face, when I see this little bird's face, it's really comforting because it's as if she's telling me that, like everything's gonna be okay, especially during like a time like now, and I think that's where sort of power lies in art. It doesn't matter what kind of art you like, it's a it reminds you like, at times that things though seemingly menacing, but we're all gonna be fine and we just gotta keep making art and appreciating art and so when I see her, it really brings me a lot of comfort, these little birds, and I would hope that they do the same for some of the viewers, and collectors as well.
I think so. For me, they especially do. I think that their facial expressions and the way that you stylize them, it has that grace and it has that confidence, but also that guardian angel type feel to me. They're looking over all of us, and they have
Yeah,
a matriarchal aspect to them, as you mentioned earlier. And
yeah,
something I've noted with the gallery and being there every day and having the art that we have, which is always surreal. So it's never quite, 100% representational of our current world. When people see things that they haven't seen much of or at all, so fusing different things, creating things that are just dreamlike or whimsical or just otherworldly, sometimes it takes people back because it's just unfamiliar to them and that's their initial reaction. But what's wonderful is that
hmm
now it's opened that door. So now this is something that's become a part of their visual vernacular. And going forward, it changes their interpretation because that first hit happened. Now it's understood. It's not going to be shocking any longer. And they start to, with the gallery especially, grow to really love it because what we do is quite different from our neighboring galleries and many of the galleries in our area. So it's a wonderful thing to provoke a response because it's then, as you mentioned, it's permeating and it's affecting that person. And further going on about art as an escape, this is a sense of hope. There's a sense of peace and serenity here, and in difficult times, it's something that we could all greatly use and we truly need. And so I thank you for giving us these because this show in particular, as well as your pieces, truly do that for me. And it just kills me that they're not on the walls and people can't see them in person because with yours especially, when we opened them up, we were like, wow. And we felt like that when we got the images, of course, but there's just such a beautiful virtuosity to the way you painted them. And again, this elegance and this magic. I mean, with this kind of shimmer effect, it comes alive as you move around the pieces, and the light catches it in just the right way. And it enhances the depth of the plane. It gives you an idea of maybe they're fireflies or they're fluttering leaves falling from the branches behind her. And it's a very, what's the word? It's full of motion, and it's difficult to, show that in just an image. So hopefully, as I constantly move around, you guys kind of get a feel of that, because I really want to try to show that off in this video and all the videos that we post on social media. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
As one of the viewers has said, your art is spirit is a gift, and it is, because you feel it from the works. You truly, truly do.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you. That really truly means the world to me. And this little lady is hilarious, because this is Winter, and it's based on a robin, and she is probably the most serene and meditative creature of the bunch, because it's winter and it's snowing around her, and the reason why she's a little bit more plump than the other birds is because it's cold, and she's sort of ruffled up her feathers a little bit. And I love that, because birds do that in real life, in nature. But it really fits my aesthetics as well. I when I paint goldfish mermaids or ladybirds, they tend to be more full size. And to me, that feels comforting, that feels warm, even though the surroundings are, perceived cold or wintry. And so, in this piece, you'll see plum blossoms, which is actually one of my favorite flowers, because in Chinese mythology, they represent resilience. Plum will bloom before cherry blossoms, so a lot of times they will bloom in snow. And I don't know if you noticed, but the branches in the plum blossoms generally are really, really gnarly. They just grow all over the place. They'll go up. They're just fighting. The thing is, they're so beautiful, but they're covered in snow and they're fighting for their survival.
Yeah.
And that's what I love. And in contrast to the plum blossom, the reason why this little lady in winter is the most sort of cute is to contrast that. So there, again, we're trying to find balance between the supporting elements and the main character.
Absolutely. It's a great thing for artists to take into consideration, and sometimes it even happens subconsciously.
Yeah. So, and I want to mention like the little golden butterflies that you'll notice in all 4 paintings. And this is actually something that I do I've been doing for many, many years. They actually represent to me little blessings. And they represent like our loved ones, watching over us. So you'll see, tiny fluttering golden butterflies in most of all my paintings. And whether, they are, ancestors or grandparents or your kids or whoever that is sort of watching over us. If the little birds are our guardian angels, the little butterflies are sort of their guardian angel.
And everyone needs one of those. So it's a beautiful sentiment. So we had a question pop up from Gina. She says, who does winter represent to you? Anyone specific?
As a person wise? Like a character?
I guess we'll take it from there, and then she'll be more specific in her response, and then we'll kind of, meander that way. Yes, she said. Thanks, Gina.
Yeah, let's see. Who represents winter for me? Let's see. That's a really good question. I always go to my grandmother's. I want to say my dad's mom was a bit more, how do I say? She's a bit more forgiving, and even though she was the matriarch, she was really sort of warm at the same time. But my mom's mom, because she was a teacher, although, they obviously love us all about the same, but for me, she always felt a little cold. And so when I think about winter, I think about my mom's mom, but she is, again, this sort of badass woman, she taught and then she raised kids on her own while her husband was on cargo ships trying to make a living for their family. And I know I sort of always go back to family and tradition, and that is what I know. And that's sort of one thing that's fascinating for me to discover is whenever I think about what to paint or what art to make, I've learned not to look outside, but to look inside. I look inward and I look backwards.
Yeah.
I look at history. I look at, tradition. I think about what matters for me. And I guess I'm an old-fashioned guy. I don't know. I just love, like paintings from the 17th to 18th century, especially, Edo period in Japan, obviously what's kind of interesting about that is the Japanese painters learned Chinese paintings from Chinese painters from the Tang Dynasty who sort of went to Japan and taught them how to do, like the flower and bird paintings. And speaking of flower and bird paintings, I don't know if Lucia or Lucy is still with us, or I saw her name in the chat earlier, but I've never met Lucy. She's a follower on Instagram and she loves my work. And she surprised me yesterday by sending me a message saying she did a presentation in her art class about my work. And I thought, wow, that's really awesome. Like, what was it about? And oh, there she is. Hi, Lucy. Yeah, she said she compared my work to traditional Hua Niao painting. Hua is flower, Niao is bird. Traditional Asian flower and bird paintings. She sort of put traditional 17th century Chinese paintings next to my, she actually used the cherry blossom bird lady painting as an example. Like, this is sort of this is somebody who in 2020, like sort of taking the same approach in aesthetics, but making it new and sort of, blending it with his fascination with mythology, Western mythology. And I thought that was fascinating because I've always just sort of called what I do new traditional Asian art. I never really sort of even, went a little deeper as far as the category or the classes go. But I thought that was really fantastic. So thank you, Lucy. I just wanted to thank her, virtually. I know we exchanged a couple messages, but thank you so much for that. It means a lot to me.
That's so nice. I think that, a lot of, students now and a lot of our generations are taking even more appreciation in artists like you and looking back at old masterwork that allows you to really hone in your technique and give you these incredible goals with that to achieve, making the work incredible from just a talent perspective. But here you are now engaging in stories and you're making it contemporary and understandable. And you're using the idea of story and of mood and of tradition, things that we all can understand. So you're working in ways that I think are inspirational to us all. And you're doing so in such a spectacular fashion because you're making it your own. You're stylizing it so it's recognizable as your work and it stands out as such. And part of that, I think, is the slightly illustrative quality to how you depict your birds, your mermaids. So I know that you had a lot of inspiration growing up with traditional work, but how about cartoons and anime,
Oh, yes.
Disney, all of those subcultures of
I am so glad you're bringing this up because I picked this spot specifically in front of my collections.
So tell us about it.
So because we're, sheltering at home and this is probably my happy spot right behind me. It's my very small collection. I know compared to some of you guys out there, this is very tiny. But because I studied animation in school, because I did character design, one of my biggest influences was always Studio Ghibli and Hayao Miyazaki. So you'll see on here,
yes,
those are some of the characters from Totoro, and that's No Face. And I actually got to design this figure, Hayao Miyazaki figure, with a buddy of mine who runs a production company that makes toys. And we did this in 2014. It's called Miya-san, because Miya-san is actually what the producer at Studio Ghibli calls Hayao Miyazaki. And I thought it was really cute because it's like a nickname, Miya-san. And we produced this resin figure and we donated all the proceeds to the tsunami hit areas in Japan. So that was really, really great. So yeah, I want to say because I grew up with manga, because the manga that I used to read are not around anymore because that's how old I am. But I still read like Ranma and like obviously I watch a lot of Ghibli movies and it's always a great topic to talk about at conventions like Comic-Con. It's like what's your favorite Ghibli movie? Like that's how you make friends instantly. It's like let's talk about Ghibli. Yeah, so I want to say animation has played, especially Studio Ghibli, has played a big role in my creative career. Speaking of strong female leads, like I think Hayao Miyazaki has had a big influence on my work in that sense as well. I generally paint female figures, whether they're mythological or not, but they generally tend to be more powerful, even though they are sort of cute or full figure, but they're wise. And if you think about the characters from Hayao Miyazaki's movies, and that's how he sort of portrays his female leads, and I've always really appreciated that because I felt that genre was under sort of represented in a way. Just kind of like how I feel about traditional Asian art. I feel like I wish more people would be painting this way because it's really beautiful and it's so subtle. And the way that one of the things I really appreciate about traditional Asian art is the precision that it takes. Because a lot of it has to do with calligraphy and the way that you hold your brush and this and that. And I've never taken a calligraphy class, to be honest. And like I kind of just picked it up and I painted and I drew what I resonated with, that I genuinely loved. And that's really about all that you can hope for when you're working on the piece. You just hope that part of your passion and your appreciation for this form of art or technique comes through in the piece that you're working on. And as far as story goes, Hayao Miyazaki Ghibli has played a big role in that as well. When I approach my paintings, especially Save the Fourth Season, the little birds in front of us, I always think about what their story is. I think about what sort of, because that leads to the supporting elements. Why do you have cherry blossoms? Why do you have a fruit tree? What is she singing about? Like all these things that kind of tie all the works together. And also, I feel like art could be a little intimidating sometimes for people to like. A lot of people don't know how to approach art, but if you tell them, this piece has to do with this, here's a little story that goes with it, and immediately it draws people in, and they want to know more. And I guess you get to sort of educate, like each other that way, and you vibe off each other. So yeah, I want to say Ghibli, manga, and I like cute things. I grew up with Sanrio and Hello Kitty, and how I can't deny the fact that I like, and I truly believe there's a reason why Hello Kitty is still so popular and around as popular as ever, because there is power in cute. Let's face it, like this whole like cute look came out of Japan after disasters.
Exactly.
Like they knew, there's a lot of power and that lies in that. And I guess my approach with art nowadays is to find the sort of middle point between cute, healing, therapeutic with like really fine and exquisite and traditionally inspired art. And I think that's what really gets me going when I think about something like that.
I truly think that what makes a successful piece of art is the idea that it can be just appreciated at face value, just for the beauty and the technique by that artist. But there is more to it. So as I've said a couple times on here now, with past artists that I've interviewed, it's about the layers that exist. So little bits, little ingredients that represent the full story, that should that person want to dive deeper, it is available to them. And further from what you were saying earlier, I think you are educating us and you are sharing these more traditional mediums that people may not be so familiar with, because you're giving us that segue. We're now falling in love with your work and we're connecting with it and we want to learn more. And so because of the way that you honor and you utilize tradition and heritage, and you bring in these techniques and these styles, now we're learning about it and it's becoming a part of our vocabulary. And even further, our vocabulary is this style. Our vocabulary is growing up with cartoons and anime. And for me too, I mean, I was young when it first started coming into the US, but I grew up around a very Asian community. So I had friends from Japan and China and Korea, and they all had little elements of that they were able to share with me. And this became what I loved. And it was for the stories, but also for the artistry behind the comics and the animation. And it's now the language of all of us. So it's quite natural for us to find comfort and to find a love for these styles and appreciation that now our generations are taking these stories and these styles one step further.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially with the new generation. There's such an appreciation for the level of artistry in manga. And I'm always really impressed by the level of acceptance as well. Like, like people are generally open to anything. Like if it's a good story, it's got a strong character, great, I'll read it. I love that. People are just so open about art in general.
I think so too. And it's a wonderful thing because we are a bit more reserved because of technology in other ways. So it allows us to kind of be brought back together with one another and have that connecting force that we need as humans.
Yeah.
And so actually, two questions popped up.
Okay.
Actually three. Someone had asked, I think when you were speaking about the Miyazaki figure that you designed, if people can buy them still.
Well, this one is actually completely sold out because it's been out since 2014. If you go to I want to say Big Shot Toys, or if you just go to my website or just Google Mia-san figure Martin Hsu, maybe you'll find it on eBay or elsewhere. But I'm actually currently working with another artist and planning on releasing another Hayao Miyazaki inspired figure. It was meant to come out this July at San Diego Comic-Con, but we don't know if that's still happening. So that's still sort of in the works. Hopefully it will happen because it's really cute.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, thankfully with the internet now, we can still do so much from home if that should be the case. Next question, do you like Aya Takano? I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right. I know her work. She works like under Murakami's umbrella. She does very anime style figures.
Yes.
Yeah, the females.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that whole like class and school because I feel like they all work together or know each other or work out of the same studio or something, and it's always sort of a dream to be sort of working with that kind of caliber. Um, I want to say I have an appreciation for really hardcore anime driven art. I think it's really, really great. I think it's very different from what I do. I think I do try to find things that I love about manga and anime, and I incorporate those things into my paintings. But yeah, Aya's work is great.
Yeah, she's awesome. And that whole super flat movement is what I think really started to bring these aesthetics and these subcultures into the mainstream of contemporary art. And I think I mentioned actually when I was speaking with Hope Doe, she's originally from the US, but she's been in Japan for a number of years. And we did an interview with her and her Four Seasons paintings. And her summer piece too actually had these kind of orange like fruits in them as well, which I thought was quite interesting. And I meant to bring up before. But
Cool.
yeah, I mean, her and I were talking about all of this as well with the influence and inspiration of anime and manga. And, as you mentioned, these are very hopeful and cute and sweet aesthetics that came out of a very dark time after World War II and after Japan had capitulated from the war, I'm sorry, from the bomb, the bombs dropping. And it was a horrible time because you had increased censorship, you had the occupation of US forces there. And so all the pride and patriotism was completely, squandered. And so through this artistry and through, these studios and these comics that started to pop up, they were able to kind of confront all of that and still maintain that hope and beauty in such a dark and tragic time. And I think it's a really beautiful thing to note and to always remember.
Yeah, and I mean, just to add to that, I feel like the Four Seasons show at your gallery has the sort of similar effects to our current affairs a little bit, just by showing really beautiful work, like opening people's eyes or perspective to a different world, or for a second take us away from this reality. I think it's just such a sweet relief.
I think so too. And I think also that everything is cyclical and things are always changing. This is just one part of many, and it will be behind us before we know it. And I will say also that the works are all really beautiful together. I mean, group shows are difficult sometimes because you have so many different artists coming together. And although there's a unifying theme, you have a difference in technique and palette in their own, thematical interpretation and so on. So sometimes the shows can be a little disparate, which is okay because they're beautiful in that right too. But this was one of the most cohesive and striking shows we've had. There was such a brilliant use of color and story, and each piece really kind of worked with and against all the other pieces because each artist was working on four at once. And it really, that's why I laid it out on my bed. I don't know if you saw, I made a video where I laid
Absolutely. And I shared that video and people were like, what?
It just looked so beautiful. And
Yeah.
I just wanted them to be seen because I know that in the capacity of the gallery, it may not happen for this show. But now I'm thinking constantly about how we can do more shows like this, because seeing you guys work in series, it just makes the work even more impactful. And it's just so nice to see various interpretations by that one artist side by side. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm working on that, and I'll let you
Well,
know
let
for
me
sure.
know.
I will. I will. So Gina has another really good question. Since your characters seem very fantasy-like and cutesy, do you see yourself creating anything based off of this time with the pandemic, or would that be too dark for your characters?
That is a really, really great question. Because I've been working out of my home office, I've been working on these really small commissions for people that I started offering about a week and a half ago. They're just 4 by 6. They're graphite drawing of, say, if you got one, you get to pick an animal, say a giraffe, and I draw the giraffe holding on to a golden balloon shaped like a heart. And I call this series Pick Me Ups. And I was really inspired because, especially when it first hit, about like 2 or 3 weeks ago, people were really sad. And I thought, well, what can I do? And plus, I have very limited amount of space at home. I couldn't possibly work on big paintings. So what can I do that's affordable and for people to own, and that'll make them, happy or pick them up a little bit. So I would say the whole Pick Me Up series is something that derived from the current affairs. I don't generally see myself working on anything that's really, really dark. And I don't know if it's something that I need to work out within. Like I'm not inspired to make really, really, really dark work. I feel like my angle and my intention for art and for life and for us is hope, it is light. And so when I even in the darkest times, I try to find light.
Yeah.
And as an artist with my brush, what I can do is create that light. Even if you're just looking at it on Instagram, or if you're a collector, hang it up on your wall. That's where I come in.
Absolutely. And I'm incredibly grateful for that, as well as I know many people that I've met and have now been able to call my friends through the gallery. And it's important to note that there are different galleries and different shows and different publications and so on for different styles of work. So although you may not be pursuing that aesthetic or that mood, and most of the artists we show certainly do not either, it has its place, and its places all the time as well. But we like to focus on a bit more work that has that hopeful and that uplifting feel. Because for me, this art has always been an escape for me, because reality is difficult. Even during times that aren't like this, we have our challenges. We lose people we love. We go through hardship in a multitude of ways. And I love the escape that this type of work provides me, and that light and that hope. And I found that even more so than ever, while we go through this, people are really aching for work like yours, because it does the same for them. And it's a very beautiful thing. And artists play a very, very important role always, but especially in times like this.
That's tremendous for me to know and for me to hear. It's something that I can only wish for when I make the artwork. When someone tells me that they had a bad day, but they walk into the door, they see one of my pieces on their wall, and it just gives them, 10 seconds of peace of mind, and it sort of changed their mood, and
It does.
that's the power of paintings of all genres. Like, it sort of affects us tremendously in an impactful way. I'm just grateful to have sort of found this approach with art for me. Because of my upbringing, because of the Japanese influences and Asian Chinese traditional influences, I sort of found this to be really comforting for me. One thing that I realized through painting is a lot of times it's actually not about the application. It's not about putting the brush on the panel. It's about breathing. It's about like finding inner peace. I know it sounds like all like, ooh, inner peace, but
I don't think so at all.
Yeah. But a lot of times when I'm alone at the studio, and because of this type of painting, unlike, I don't do oils. I've taken an oil class in college. I did not like it. I didn't know why I didn't like it, but now I do. It's because I like how committed you have to be with a brush with Asian paintings. Because once that brush is down, you can't take the ink out. So every brush is very committed, it's very precise, and you really have to control your breathing as you do it. And just subconsciously, after like 30 minutes of breathing, you feel calm. Like, you don't know why. And you think back, you're like, oh, it's because I was being really sort of focused on my breathing when I was painting. And what I can hope is that sense of ease and calm comes through the painting. That would be a really, really sort of the most tremendous reward for me is that.
I think they absolutely do. I mean, I can speak for myself. Whenever I go and we have all the Four Seasons works in a guest room away from our cats, because of course our cats would not treat them as nicely as I would hope.
Yeah.
But whenever I go in there to do some videos for social media or to pull the pieces to do these videos, I'll just sit in there and I'll just look at them all and I'll take them all in. And sometimes a lot more time goes by than I realize. And I truly do feel better when I leave that room and I continue on with my day. And I think that, now more than ever, that's appreciated. And as we've, through the gallery and as you are also very encouraging, inspirational, with artists that are having a hard time creating, just know how much weight they carry with what they share with the world and how many spirits that, they lift. And just because you may not have, the kind of likes or comments on Instagram does not mean that people are not watching and reacting, because they certainly are. And you guys have such an important role and I think one of the most, crucial today, in addition to obviously, nurses and doctors, but, morale is everything, and your perception and how you approach each and every day. So, please, I'm so glad you're still inspired and you're coming up with these incredible ideas that bring people up and give them these special opportunities to work with you on these commissions.
Thank you. And I would extend the same to you. I feel like without the gallery as part of the community, without the gallery supporting artists, giving us, a theme or a stage to shine, a lot of times the artists need that, this was the perfect show, for example. It's like the Four Seasons is one of my favorite topics, and it's, with you at this gorgeous, gorgeous space, and you have been one of the most pleasant, people to work with. It's just, it's yeah, absolutely. And I see, and I really want to say though, Erica, like you work so hard. You work really hard, like you love art and you want to push art and you want to educate, you want people to fall in love with the art that you carry. And we as artists feed off of that. Like, I feel that's so inspiring for me as well. I just want to throw it out there.
Thank you. No, it means a lot. I mean, this is all I ever want to do and what I love to do. And it's the most incredible thing when I get to meet and get to know the artists. And just the same, those fans and the collectors, because we're all bonded by certain things. And it only takes a matter of minutes before we learn that we have much more in common. And it's this beautiful unifying experience. But also on, the academic side, it allows us to continue to teach and to share art. And there's just so many things that we can do together. And so it's always a pleasure. And it makes my life incredibly fulfilled. So thank you. And thank you, Gina. Gina's great. Gina's been watching all our stories. And
hi, Gina.
An incredible question, commentary and asking great questions and all that stuff. And she's also a wonderful support of the arts and someone that I, found as a great friend through all of this too. So
isn't that great? Like, friendship is what comes out of these sort of, like shows and art shows, Comic-Con, whatever. Like a lot of these collectors have become my friends and now they're family, and I've seen their kids grow up, and it's fantastic.
It is. I mean, I'm pretty misanthropic, but when it comes to the gallery, that's the only time that I find myself enjoying meeting people and bonding, because you're now connected with people from all over the world, all different age groups and backgrounds, all unifying under someone's work. And it's an incredibly special thing.
For the love of art.
Yeah, absolutely. And so another really supportive, I don't know who this person is. I think maybe they're a friend of yours, Egg Drop Ramen. They've been very, very kind and generous with their compliments. But they're wondering if there are any other creators here ready to draw or paint because of what we're saying. And I certainly hope so.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'm actually planning more works inspired by spring, because I feel like spring to me represents life and hope. So I feel like that's probably a nice thing to focus on right now. And I really want to make more creatures like the goldfish mermaids or my little ladybirds. I think they're really cute and powerful and wise. I think I just made a little octopus, and it's inspired by the Dumbo octopus from the deep sea. So it's kind of like a baby Ursula.
Yeah, they're very cute.
Yeah, so I want to continue to do stuff like that. I watch a lot of David Attenborough. I watch a lot of Planet Earth, and whenever I see these animals on the screen, all I think about is like, what if they're half human?
Yeah.
It's like, how can I construct a scene where it's sort of striking for environmental values, but at the same time beautiful and precious and exquisite? And I think that's, I've always, I've Hi guys, sorry about that. I think we went over an hour. Let's see, how do I add Erica? Hi guys. Hi Maki.
Okay,
Hello
we're
again.
back. All
Has it
right.
been an hour? I can't believe it's been a whole hour.
They go by so fast. So we'll wrap it up now. I think we got a really
Okay, okay.
amazing talk out of this, and I loved every moment of it, and I hope everyone enjoyed it too. So this is your last opportunity if there are any pressing questions. Otherwise, just a brief overview again. These are Martin's Four Seasons paintings. We have some interest, but at the moment they're available. So if you're considering any, please let us know so we can talk with you more about the acquisition process. And yeah, we do payment plans, as I've mentioned, so we make this as easy as possible, especially in a time like this. Never feel shy about approaching us about what works for you, because we're very patient and we just love to see when the works go to the homes that they'll be adored in. Everything's on our website, but you're always welcome to message me. And I think Martin also, he's so nice. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you too if you have any questions.
Yeah,
And other
I'm
than
here for
that,
you.
yeah, we're all here for you and we appreciate you all immensely. So before we go, we have one last question and then we'll head off. Someone is asking for tips for art students and how to face self-doubt.
Oh, yes, the infamous self-doubt. Well, I can share with you firstly that we all go through self-doubt. I have some
Yes.
terrible, terrible days where I feel like what is this traditional Asian art thing? What am I doing? But I feel like in those days, I would recommend sort of thinking about what truly matters for you. Like when I'm in doubt, I think about what matters for me, and family comes to mind always, first and foremost. And then I think about, well, why does that matter for me? And if it does, what kind of art can I make based on that? So I always tell students, like look within. When you're in doubt, look within. Think about what matters, what drives you, what excites you. What are your interests? Is it animals? Is it nature? Is it your history? Is it your family history? Is it your relationship with your parents? Like what really gets you going? Because there lies true inspiration and there lies ideas that will truly resonate with people who are looking at your art because it comes from a true place. So yeah, look within.
I think so too. I think that's excellent advice. And just to kind of bridge on that a little bit more, I think it's important for artists to talk to their peers because it's such a solitary practice sitting in your studio and creating. And as much as you still will internalize, you get lost in your thoughts sometimes. And often a little bit of clarity will just come from engaging in one another and doing things like this for me because I have doubt all the time. I'm always worried. I always want everything to sell and everything to find its home right away. And I need to be reminded sometimes and have that kind of shift back on my focus. And I get that through talking with my artists and talking with my peers in the art world. And they're a great resource too.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I think for some reason my personal account connected with this. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna hopefully it will go on my account later and I can save it on there. But if you can save it on your end too, I'll message you after just to go through how to send it to me
Yeah, I
separate.
just I save it to my story, right?
Perfect, perfect. And
Okay.
then
Okay.
there's one more step. It's a little annoying, but
Okay.
I'm because it wouldn't let us work based off of Haven starting it. I'm gonna have to DM you more about that because we want this to be live on Martin's account also for the 24 hours, and then we're uploading all these to our YouTube channel.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, so for anyone who missed it for the day that it's up, they can revisit it later. So
Super sweet.
yeah, so thank you, Martin, for all of this. It was really wonderful, and I'm so happy to be able to speak with you and get to know your girls a bit more. And thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Yeah, you guys have been so supportive and sweet with your comments and questions. So we're very grateful. And yeah, we'll see you all again soon. Take care and stay
Cool.
well.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.